Hello, thanks for watching this movie. I'm Takuro Shibata, a director of STARworks Ceramics. This artist talk is one of the parts of our artist in residency program. Our new application deadline is on April 15th, 2021. So please check out our website at starworksnc.org to see more details. So today, it's my pleasure to introduce our current resident artist, Carey Nathanson. He has been in STARworks since October 2020. He is working on functional ceramics using kurinuki technique and wood firing. We look forward to his artist talk today. Thanks, Carey.
Thanks, Takuro. Hi, my name's Carey Nathanson. I'm an artist in residence here this fall at STARworks Clay Studio. I came to STARworks this fall to fire the Noborigama kiln, a wood fire kiln, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about my background before I start flipping through slides. So I'm just gonna have this first slide up for a minute here while I go through my background. I am from Wilmington, North Carolina, and I started working with clay in high school and college. But I had a long hiatus from working with clay. I didn't get my hands in any clay for a long time because I was doing some different things. And a couple years ago in 2017, I was kind of in limbo. Didn't really know what I was doing. And being from North Carolina, I had heard about the Penland School of Crafts. And I decided that I was going to take the ceramic concentration at Penland that year, no matter what it was. No matter what instructor it was or what aspect of clay that it was. And it ended up being Nick Schwartz, who's a potter out of Northern California, and it was wood firing. Before that, I didn't know anything about wood firing. My teachers had never talked about atmospheric firing, and really I didn't know much about I didn't know much about clay, honestly. The materials that go into it, the materials that go into glazing, and the process of any type of firing. So it kind of blew my mind being exposed to wood fire. And by the end of the concentration, which was an intensive workshop that last 8 weeks at Penland, it had its hooks in me, wood firing. And since then, I've been kind of bouncing around, learning about it and firing different kilns in the US and also in Japan. Just to talk about kind of my background since then, there was another artist named John Dix that did a cameo during that workshop at Penland with Nick Schwartz. And after the workshop was over in 2017, I decided to go hook up with both of those guys, Nick and John, in California and Japan, to learn more in fire. And I ended up going to Northern California, Comptche, where Nick lives, to fire early that next year. And then I went to be John Dick's assistant in Japan. I've done that for 3 months out of the last 2 years in 2018 and 2019. After I got back from Japan, I went back to Nick Schwartz's, fired his kiln with him a couple more times, kind of in an assistant role to him. And then I got a scholarship to fire the Onigama at Peters Valley School of Craft in New Jersey with Ashwini Bhatt, Heidi Kreitschet, and Bruce Dainart. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to, do some firings of my own. And I am kind of on this path of bouncing around doing several residencies. And I did a residency at the American Museum of Ceramic Art in Pomona, California, under Heidi Kreitschet. And then before I was at STARworks, I did a residency at the Mendocino Art Center in Northern California. that was upended kind of by the pandemic, and I found myself back in North Carolina at home, and I ended up doing this residency at STARworks. So, you know, if it wasn't for meeting Nick Schwartz and John Dix and being exposed to wood firing, I don't think I probably would have continued to work in clay. It's fundamental to my process, and it's a huge part of why I want to continue working in clay. There are, and I'm going to start flipping through slides soon, I promise. There's a bunch of things that I love about wood firing. I love the kind of switching gears after you go through a cycle of making. To get out of the studio, you know, it can be a little bit tedious for me to be in the studio for long periods of time. So I really love that aspect of wood firing, where you go through a cycle of making, you make a body of work for a specific firing, for a specific kiln, and then you completely wash your hands of that cycle of making. You get outside, you know, you get to do physical things outdoors, process wood, and then you just concentrate on the firing, which is, you know, the way I was taught are long firings, usually with a group of people, a little bit larger group of people, and then digesting all the work before you, and kind of getting to take a breath before you go back into the studio to make another cycle of work. Other things that I just really like about wood firing, the you know, the community aspect of it, which I've come to find I have a love-hate relationship with, for sure. But I really like that part of it, kind of community getting together to collaborate on a firing. You know, it's such a beautiful process to me. It's, you know, especially in long firings, 7-8 day firings, can be somewhat intense and emotional. And when you're planning a firing months out, thinking about it every day with the work you're making, getting into it and seeing, you know, going through it with a group of people, and especially if you feel like it was a success, it's just kind of, it's just a beautiful process, and it's, you know, one of the main reasons why I want to work in clay. A couple other things that just about wood firing, I love the serendipity of the wood kiln, the unpredictability of it. You know, there's certain things you can control, obviously, with how you load pieces, what clay body you're using, what materials you're using, where it is in the kiln, what temperature you go to. But I love the unpredictability of it. That's another reason why you kind of can take a breath during that transition from the studio to the firing, where you just let go of your work. You give it to the kiln, you leave it up to the gods, and you accept, you know, whatever results you get. That to me is a super romantic idea, and it's just another thing I really enjoy about wood firing. You know, another reason too why it's so intense, it can be intense in a emotional process, and it kind of amplifies the importance, and you know, the stakes are higher in wood firings because they're infrequent, and there's you know, they're not happening. Some people fire really frequently, but I've come to find, especially with artists firing bigger kilns, they're more infrequent, so the stakes are higher, and that just adds to kind of the intensity in the whole environment and atmosphere surrounding a firing. And just the aesthetic, the surfaces that you can create doing firings are just, can be breathtaking and super dramatic. And I really love the old school nature of wood firing and working with clay. The idea of digging clay from the earth and firing it in the wood kiln, like they've been doing for thousands of years. There's something romantic about that to me too. And it's just another thing that really drew me to wood firing. So these first group of slides I'm going to flip through, these are just different firings that I've been involved with over the past 3 or 4 years. And they just kind of show, you know, kind of the feel around wood firings. But this is a photo at Flint Creek Pottery, Nick Schwartz's studio in Comptche, California. This is Anagama style wood kiln. Again, another photo at Nick's, looking in the front of the Anagama. This is a lighting ceremony where the bottle of bourbon's passed around and offerings made to the kiln gods. Nick Schwartz, again, at his kiln, he's got a pizza oven, you can see right here, built into the back of the Anagama. It's a little separate chamber, and every time he does a firing, he does a pizza party, and that's very popular, and that's just a shot of the kids watching him roll out dough for pizza. This is at Nick's also. This is his other tube kiln, and this was a firing in 2018. This piece, the wolf poking out of the flame, is by his partner, wife, Jess Thompson. But it's just a cool photo. Again at Nick's, just a couple photos of load jobs. This is at Penland. Again at Nick's. This is John Dix's kiln in Japan, where I was an assistant in 2018 and 2019. He's got an Anagama style wood kiln also, but this one has a sprung arch where the sides of the kiln go straight up. It makes it a lot easier to load. And he has a really big firebox also, as you can see. Another shot of us loading the kiln at Flint Creek. This is Nick Schwartz right here, holding the 2 jugs. And then these are just, you know, some random photos of firings. Again, Nick Schwartz in Comptche. This is a shot of Hikidashi at Penland, John Dix, Adam Ting, Nick Schwartz. Hikidashi is where you pull out for those of you that don't know, you pull out a piece from the firing at peak temperature, and it's crash cooled in the open air. This is at Nick's also, garlic bread being cooked in the by the passive damper, toasted by the passive damper. A lot of, you know, eating and kind of partying that goes around wood firings is another, you know, great part about them. This is a Nick's 2 final stoke and the side stoke with the flame shooting out. This is the Anagama at Peters Valley during a firing there that I did in the summer of 2018. This kiln, it's a huge kiln, maybe the largest Anagama in the U.S. I'm not, one of the largest for sure, and one of the oldest, for one of the first Anagamas built in the U.S. And there's no traditional stack on this. I mean, it's literally built into the side of the hill, and the chimney is basically a tail that just opens up at the end of the kiln, where you can see right here. And you can kind of see here too, it kind of snakes its way up the kiln. This is me side stoking at Peters Valley also. And this too is the Peters Valley Anagama, me stirring. Again, Peters Valley, the final stoke, is a picture of me and Ashwini Bhatt, who did a residency here at STARworks also. Final stoke at Flint Creek. Again, this is a shot of the kiln at Flint Creek at Nick Schwartz's studio. And this is a hikidashi. John Dix pulling out a hikidashi from his kiln in Sasayama in Japan. And this is a shot at the Mendocino Art Center. They have a train kiln and a single catenary arch wood soda that we fired at the same time last February of this year. And this is a shot of a kiln I helped Nick Schwartz build in Albion, California, an Onigama style kiln that someone hired him to build. So anyway, I just wanted to show some photos of wood firings. These next couple photos are kilns in Japan that I got to visit when I was there. And this is kind of a transition to me talking about my influences in my work a little bit. Just to talk about these photos first, this is a kiln in Tachikui, which is an old pottery city that they've been making work in for a long time. This is a huge kiln that the entire town comes together to fire for an extended period of time. This is another shot of a kiln in Tachikui that's been overgrown by weeds and vegetation, but you can see it's literally, both of these kilns are built into the hill. And this kiln is one that I visited in Shigaraki in Japan. So transitioning to talking about Japan a little bit and kind of the influences in my work. This is Nick Schwartz, one of his pieces, and you can just kind of see in these couple pieces, you get a little taste for his forms and firing style. When I saw, John Dixon, Nick Schwartz, they, have a huge influence on my kind of identity as a ceramic artist, and also my time working with John in Japan. When I saw John's work for the first time, I didn't really quite understand it. And the more that I worked with him and learned a little bit about his influences and living in Japan and kind of the work that he had been exposed to, it really informed my work going forward and has been a huge influence on me. Just to gloss over really simplistically some history of kind of the way forms and ceramic art kind of evolved in Japan, as I understand it, over the last 500 or 600 years. There was this kind of transition in aesthetic in as far as what was popular from these in Japan in the 16th century. And again, this is like a very brief, simplistic history of Japanese ceramic art, but there was a period in the 16th century where there was a shift from these kind of tight, symmetrical, intricately decorated, colorfully painted pieces to more of a popularity in rough, loose, wobbly, simple, subtle, asymmetrical pots, where there was kind of a shift in firing, in the result they were trying to get also, as far as wanting more pieces to be decorated with the wood ash as opposed to glazing. And you know, fast forwarding to the 20th century in potters in America, in the 20th century, from what I understand, there was more and more American potters started going, kind of making a pilgrimage to Japan to learn from some of the Japanese masters in Japan. And over the last 50 years, there have been more and more artists in America bringing back kiln designs and building Japanese style kilns, anagama kilns in the US. And, you know, it's something these guys, John Dix and Nick Schwartz, they both did. They both went to Japan to study ceramics, and I ended up going as well. And, you know, I just mention it because it has influenced the way that I, you know, look at my work, and has been a big influence on me. Just one specific thing about the aesthetic, I think part of the reason why it spoke to me so much, the idea of beauty and imperfection, imperfect pieces, wobbly pieces, asymmetrical pieces, like it completely does a 180 from the definition of classical traditional beauty in the Western world. And, you know, I think about that a lot in all aspects of life, not just art. The idea that what is conventional is not necessarily truth, and to get a little heady, and what is conventionally is beautiful, you know, for a majority isn't necessarily for everyone. So, you know, seeing some of these guys work, getting a little taste of some of the work in Japan was just eye-opening to me. And it's a big part of just, you know, what I think about when I make work. So I got a couple pieces. This is one of Nick Schwartz's pieces that's on his property, just to give you a little idea of like kind of the aesthetic that I think I'm talking about. And then here's a couple of John Dix pieces. This is Shino glazed Hikidashi. I think this piece was fired at Peters Valley, actually, in the Anagama there. This is another Shino piece, actually, but just the aesthetic, you know, is just the unconventionalness of it really just stands out to me in his work. And this is a Guanomi sake cup that's a Kurinuki technique carved from a solid block, excuse me. So to go into my work a little bit, coming to STARworks, the idea was to continue, you know, chasing this kind of firing strategy that I learned from both John and Nick, and using the Iga Shigaraki style kiln that Takero's teacher built here, which is a 3-chamber Nomorigama with a firebox chamber in front that builds up a ton of surface and ash on your pieces. So you can get kind of some of these results that in these pieces that I just showed you. To go a little more specifically into some of the forms that I've been making, this Kurinuki technique that I just showed you a piece of John's that was made with, is the process of hollowing out solid blocks of clay to make your form. And I have become obsessed with making these little sake tea cups, whiskey cups. I really love this process because you can you know, kind of the idea, the way I learned it is you can texture your piece on the outside however you want, let it set up, and then hollow it out, thin it out without messing up the outside texture that you've created. So here's just a couple process shots of that technique. You know, you start hollowing out a little bit, and then you eventually get cups. And then you do the foot last. And, you know, the way I learned, I really love this style of foot, this technique of trimming a foot off the wheel by hand. And then here's some cups that have been fired. This was fired at the Mendocino Art Center, the train kiln, and then this was a refire. This was refired in soda after. So all of these are hollowed out pieces with the Kurinuki technique. This is porcelain with the flashing slip, fired at the Mendocino Art Center in the train kiln. This is a Shino glazed piece. This was fired at Nick Schwartz's kiln in Comptche. Again, this was it fired in Nick's kiln. Another Shino glazed piece. Again, fired at Nick's kiln. So another form that I'm obsessed with making are these bottles. I always think I want to make new forms, but I always go back to making these cups and bottles and really trying to dial them in. But these are built, the body is a slab and the top is usually rolled out with a dowel or carved just like the cups. And, you know, the idea with these pieces, again, for me, with what I've been going for at STARworks and in the past couple years in regards to firing is, you know, the more ash, the better. Usually, you know, in an ideal world, my pots will live as close to the fire as possible, get as much fly ash on them as possible to encourage, you know, kind of dramatic surfaces and drips and kind of, you know, a different array of colors. So this piece was fired at John Dix's kiln in Sasayama. Another piece fired in Japan. This was fired, this was in the throat arch of the train kiln at the Mendocino Art Center. This was also fired in the train kiln at the Mendocino Art Center. Same in the train kiln there. And this is a sculptural piece that was fired in John Dix's kiln in Japan in the firebox, made with clay, his reclaim recipe which has iron and rutile in it, and just all his scraps. Okay, I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say. If you have any questions for me, this is my Instagram handle at headroadpuddles on Instagram. There's photos of work on there. And if you have any questions or want to contact me for any reason, send me a message. And I just wanted to thank Takaro and Matt for having me at STARworks in the middle of a pandemic. It's been really great to be here. It's been really great. I've fired the kiln once already, and we're doing another firing next week, but it's been great firing the kiln, and I would recommend coming to do a residency here to anyone that is doing applications. You know, the building, the facilities they have here are great, and just also being in the center of the clay community in North Carolina, which is huge. There's so many potters in the area to interact and kind of network with. So yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for watching.